Welcome, friends, to another exciting episode of A VGM Journey. And I'm your host, The Messenger. The track that we're playing in today's show is Title Theme from the game Super Play Action Football, and that was composed by Yoshiki Nishimura. We've got some pretty amazing tracks for this show this week, and before we get into that, I have a big announcement to make, and that is we have launched a Patreon for this show. And don't worry, we're still going to have all these fun episodes to do. They'll still come out regularly, and they're free. But if you want to give your support to the show, then there will be some monthly bonus show that you'll get called a VGM Side Quest, which I will be hosting with my fiance Carly, where we just talk about video games and video game music, and we'll even take questions from patrons. And you can get that with the $3 tier. And we also have a $5 tier, which will grant you the bonus show and also a shout out, which we will give at the end of every show. I think at the time of this recording, I'm working on the first episode of a VGM side quest. So I'm hoping by the time this comes out, that first episode will be out. So stay tuned for that. And heck, I almost forgot. I will provide a link to the Patreon in the show notes. So all you have to do is just go to patreon.com, search a VGM Journey, and it will pop up. And speaking of popping up, this next track that I'm going to play kind of popped up when I was just listening through a bunch of different music and stuff on YouTube, and I was surprised I've never heard of this until just this past week. This is coming from Cadence of Hyrule, specifically the Symphony of the Mask DLC. This is Deku Village, which I believe was originally composed by Koji Kondo, and this arrangement was done by Danny Baranowsky. track that you just heard, that was Deku Village from the game Cadence of Hyrule, Symphony of the Mask. It was originally composed by Koji Kondo, and it was arranged by Danny Baranowsky. This is a pretty cool track, and I don't know why I'm surprised that it's so good, because the main soundtrack for Cadence of Hyrule I thought was pretty amazing. And I think the game itself is okay, which I don't want to say it's a hot take because I know quite a bit of people absolutely love the game, but it does the one thing that it should do right exceptionally well, which is the soundtrack. Because if you're not familiar with Cadence of Hyrule, what it is it's a crossover game between The Legend of Zelda and Crypt of the Necrodancer, which Crypt of the Necrodancer has a pretty amazing soundtrack as well. I think I should play something from it again in the future for the show, which was also another soundtrack by Danny Baranowski. And I think the entire Cadence of Hyrule soundtrack is this giant love letter to the music of the Legend of Zelda games. And a lot of these tracks are amazing remixes of stuff from A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, and this specific track is from Majora's Mask. And if you're a Zelda fan, or you also like Crypt of the Necrodancer, then this game would be super appealing to you. And I mean, it is fun, but that soundtrack though, there's a lot of bangers. And I never really think of Zelda music as bangers, but Danny Baranowski kind of worked his Danny Baranowski magic on the soundtrack, and it is absolutely amazing. And to be honest, I could possibly do a focus on Cadence of Hyrule because that soundtrack is so good. But I can't keep gushing on this track and the soundtrack, so we're going to move on to our next track, which is a listener request. This is coming from Muddle Madness, and he wanted me to play this track that has a pretty interesting name. It's called People, Cats, Birds, and Sea Lice. It's from the game Breath of Fire 3, and it was composed by Yoshino, Aoki, and Akari Kaida. That track that you just listened to, that was People, Cats, Birds, and Sea Lice from the game Breath of Fire 3, and it was composed by Yoshino. I'm not entirely sure what I was expecting out of that track, just based off the name. I mean, I was thinking it was going to be pleasant, but I don't think I was really prepared for how upbeat it was. There was a certain niceness to it, and I just can't get over that title. So I'm listening to this song, and I'm assuming this is a town theme. So you're walking around town, and you're like, yeah, people, people are nice. Cats, oh, they're nice too. Birds, they're just tweeting away. I think they're pretty nice too. And then there's sea lice, and I'm just thinking to myself, excuse me? Sea lice? Come on. I don't know if it was the composers just being cheeky or if there's something about sea lice in Breath of Fire 3. I don't know. Model, you're gonna have to set the record straight on this sea lice business. Overall, I mean, I think the upbeat drums and bass really sells the point that this song is pretty nice. And I'm willing to take a stroll with that song playing. So, once again, Muddle Madness, thank you for that request. I want to follow that track up with a pretty upbeat track as well. And I think this track from Wario Land 3 is perfect for this. This is the Vast Plain, the day version of the track, and this was composed by Kozue Ishikawa. That upbeat track that you're listening to right now, that was The Vast Plain from Wario Land 3, and it was composed by Kozue Ishikawa. I've been playing this game on again, off again for the last few weeks, and I'm having quite a good time with it. And it is pretty different than I was expecting, because I was expecting your run-of-the-mill platformer, and it's really not like that at all. And the big thing with this game is that Wario is invincible. He cannot die. But there are enemies that would impede his progress, though. And that the big obstacles that you would deal with is that enemies would attack you and they would affect Wario in different ways. Like if there was a fire enemy, they would shoot a fireball at him and Wario will catch on fire, and you actually use that to solve puzzles. I'm not sure how many different status effects there are in the game, but a few that I've seen so far where there are enemies with hammers and they would smush Wario and he turns into like a spring and he starts, just jumping around uncontrollably. And there was this one enemy where they would sting Wario and his face would swell up and he starts flying like a balloon. It's pretty ridiculous. But the game is a lot of fun as well. I'm actually trying to 100% it. So I'm not sure if there's going to be like anything cool that happens with 100%, but it's such a good time and I'm going to be playing that some more, probably even after recording this show. I'm going to go back to the Super Nintendo with this next track. This is coming from The Lost Vikings. This is The Great Factory, and it was composed by Charles Deenen. Track that you just listened to, that was The Great Factory from the game The Lost Vikings, and that was composed by Charles Deenen. And that's going to just about do it for the show this week. If you like what you've been listening to, have your friends check out the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever podcatching service that you can think of. I'm more than likely going to be on there. You can email the show at vgmjourney@yahoo.com. And you could also check us out on Twitter at VGMJourney. We also have a Discord for the show, which I will provide a link for it in the show notes. And we also have this brand new Patreon for the show. And with the $5 tier, you get a special shout out at the end of every show. And I would like to shout out Bedroth and his son Shukapal from Very Good Music, a VGM podcast. And also John, Johnny, David, and Jesse from Game That Tune. All you guys are pretty amazing, and thank you for your pledges. We're going to play things out with one more track, and it's a rocking one. This is Like the Wind from Power Drift, and it was composed by Hiroshi Kawaguchi. Have a good week, everyone.